Welcome to my podcast. Today's guest is an American who does a lot of things, and we're going to talk about a lot of things, but the big thing, he's in this film that a lot of people are talking about, and we're going to talk about it because he's in Don't Worry, Darling. But that is just one feather in a cap that is festooned with plumage. Ladies and gentlemen, that's top of my head, I didn't write that. It's Nick Kroll.
Hello.
Hey, Nick Kroll. How are you?
I'm well.
Thanks for doing this. It's really nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me. It's very nice to meet you as well.
Lots of things to talk about. First of all, the film that you're appearing in at the moment, because it's one that everybody, there's been a lot of talk about it. This is Don't Worry, Darling, alongside a positive celestial array of stars and talent. Harry Styles. Now there's a phenomenon of a man. How did you find him?
Is your audience familiar with him? Do I need to set him up at all?
Well, of course we know. We made Harry Styles.
And I've made out with Harry Styles. So here we are, full circle. I mean, between Florence and Harry, you have two of the biggest, out of the UK. That movie now is been out for a few weeks, but the film itself is now, done quite well and was a blast to make. We shot it in the thick of the pandemic. The whole thing was surreal, beginning to end. Including going to the Venice Film Festival and all that stuff.
I went on Graham Norton with Harry a few years ago, and he was wearing the most beautiful silk, you would call them pants, we would call them trousers, and he sat there looking wonderful. And I made the classic comedian's joke. My job there is to have a little pithy thing to say, and my thing was, "Hey, Harry, I see you got the pajamas I sent you." And thank you, Nick, for that laugh. And it got a laugh from the audience. But on the social media, the abuse. Who the F are you to talk about Harry's fashion? You've got no fashion sense, you effing F. Why don't you F? And while you're effing, why not F them as well, you F? It was unbelievable.
Yeah. And I think all of these pop stars have their social media armies, people who, again, feel so connected and so protective of. And by the way, it is nice. People don't realize you do send everybody pajamas. Just to be clear, you do. It's the gentlemanly thing to do.
And it really knocked my confidence with the whole pajama sending thing, because I'd started to become known for it in the business. Or did he send you pajamas?
Yeah.
And I felt it was really... because I worked with Kenneth Branagh once, and he always sends a hamper at Christmas. And I thought, well, what can my thing be now? I want some of that Branagh thing, and I settled on pajamas. If you and I ever work together, you will get pajamas.
I hope so. Well, you got to put something in that hamper, and it's going to be pajamas, hopefully. Does Kenneth Branagh really send a hamper? Is that really a thing, or is that just an incredible detail that you've pulled out of nowhere?
No, that's true. Yeah, we did a play together, and I'm very fortunate. Every Christmas I get a hamper.
Was that, now can I ask this might be across the pond clarification. A hamper, when I think of a hamper, I think of it as a laundry hamper that you would put your laundry into. Is that the same in the UK or no?
No, over here we think of a hamper as gold bullion. No, we think of a hamper as it's a wicker basket from an upmarket store, and it'll be and it'll have straw in it, and around the straw will be beautiful foods, high-end foods.
Okay.
What would you call that?
A gift basket.
All right, I should have said
no, because what we have is a laundry hamper, but in reality, it's a large wicker basket that then we put laundry inside of. So it's a clarification. That makes more sense, because I'm like, if Branagh's sending you a new laundry hamper every year, how many hampers do you need? You just need one, really.
You I know have done a million voices for animation. Have you done the whole commercial thing?
Yes, that's really where I start in New York. When I was starting, I was doing open mics and improv and all that stuff. But the way I made my living, and a lot of the comedians and actors living now in Los Angeles, but really you get your start in, at least I did it in New York, doing commercials and doing commercial voiceover work. And that is sort of how I made my living for the first number of years in New York. What allowing me to write and do comedy at night was auditioning for all of those commercials. But what I started booking work as was sort of in the more sketch related thing of like, hey Rob, do you want to just get McDonald's for lunch? For lunch? Are you kidding me? We should eat something healthy. No, they've got a salad option. Now you got to check out. I was sort of booking the more let's call it comedic stuff.
Hearing you say that's really interesting because that's I had the same thing going in to do mostly comic things, although now it tends to be just my own friendly voice. But back then, and you'd often find yourself in a studio with other actors, so it was quite sociable in that sense. There were budgets then for more than one person. But you've done tons where you're a character in an animation. Again, this is something I have done as well.
Yeah.
Talk for a minute about that. And I'm going to sound like, the comments will be, get over yourself, get real. Because I'm going to say it can be quite demanding. It can be quite wearing on the voice. In particular, and it wasn't called this in Britain, but I did an American thing and they used the term efforts. Now, what does efforts mean to you?
So at the end of a record, usually these films, I have a great ability to plug my own work, which I'll do now. So like on Big Mouth, my animated show, I do nearly 30 or more voices, not on any given session, but there are different levels of tryingness. But when you're doing a film, and that is, we do 10 episodes, I do, 2-hour records, and then there's re-records, all that stuff. But for films, usually you're contracted to do something like, they have up to 10 sessions with you or something like that for a film. And at the end of the session, they will then ask you for efforts. And efforts are, okay, you're running along. Now you're going to jump, and then, okay, now you're fighting with that guy. And that, and they sort of make you run through that. And almost always at the end of the session, when you are spent, exhausted, and again, fair enough, commenters. And I know the bride and the bride knights will go after, they're coming after you. That's the relationship you've built with your fans, with your audience, and with Harry Styles' social media army. This is not a pajamas this is, guys, don't come at us for this. But it is this weird thing. It's always at the end, which I guess I would prefer. I wouldn't want to lead with the efforts, but it's at the end of the session when you are physically tired, your voice is worn, you're out of tea, and they want one last sort of round literal of efforts. And you're always like, come on, what are you going to use in this? But, in animation, you do have to sell everything. You know what I mean? What I always get when I get a little testy at the end of a session, or it's session 5, I'm like, you have a library. I've done these efforts. Go to the library, folks. Let's go to the library. You've got a file filled with Nick Kroll efforts. Let's go search through that for a minute and see if you can find what you need. And depending on how tired and testy I am, I will politely ask them to go to the library.
Well, I'm glad. I don't feel so diva-ish now because I've been tempted to do that. And here's the other thing. I've played all sorts of creatures. So in one thing, and it's a fine animation, I was playing a cat who didn't really it was for Room on the Broom. And all I'm basically doing is going, and they say, now, this time when you do it, the cat is going to get onto the broom, but he's not so sure he wants to get onto the broom. And you go, and they say, now, this time he really wants to get onto the broom. I mean, there's only so much you can do. And the show you mentioned earlier is a lovely thing. It's on Netflix. Oh, hello! If people want to see it, and I liked it from even though there's a nice opening to it. It's always hard to know how to open. I was envious of people who do a nice economic but interesting opening to a show that kind of skips along and dim, and then you're in the show. But you're playing two characters in that. So for people that don't know, just give us a little bit of a taste.
It was a very strange, it's these two characters that we played who are septuagenarians, who are, the way we always describe them, they're the kind of guys who wear turtlenecks and blazers, and they are obsessed with Alan Alda. That was sort of the shorthand to who they were. And their Upper West Side, it's that sort of Woody Allen universe of the sort of Hannah and her sisters, coffee breath. They're just coffee breath people. So we built these characters. We used to do them live on stage. We'd host a very small show in a black box theater as them, and we continued to play with them. And I had a sketch show on Comedy Central called Kroll Show, and we did those characters there, and we would have this very bizarre prank show called Too Much Tuna, where we would prank unsuspecting people with too much tuna fish. And we somehow built that into a show. Frankly, that would have, I think, been a very much an Edinburgh show. And we brought that somehow to Broadway. And it was sort of a take on our love with Broadway shows, with theater shows, where we reference everything from, I'm at August Wilson plays to Martin McDonagh's Pillow Man, to everything in between, and sort of a real love letter to Broadway, a love letter to the Upper West Side, and a love letter to these men who truly were obsessed with Alan Alda, who to me symbolizes a very specific, genre of men and filmmaking and TV. And I did release, as you can see, this is another example of me being able to subtly and continually plug my own material. But I put out a special on Netflix called Little Big Boy, and I put it out a couple weeks ago, and it's I had not ventured into sort of doing a stand-up special for quite some time. And when I was preparing for it, some might be like, well, I should go watch other people's specials to see how they did it. How did they do their intro? Was it economical? How did they shoot it? Did they shoot it in a medium shot, or are they living in the wide? Do they cut to the audience? What was the background like? And I found myself, I did not want to watch, because I didn't want to start living in the comparisons of it. I wanted to just build the special on its own and not worry so much about who's done this, and will mine be as good as this? What did their theater look like? How big were the laughs?
So where are you on the whole ambition and how driven one is thing? Where are you on that pie chart of drive?
I guess I'm pretty ambitious. I think for me, a career is figuring out, and it gets easier with age, which I believe is, and the great dance is finding that level between ambition and patience, and ambition, and that not everything is going to happen immediately. I didn't start doing stand-up until I graduated. I was 24, and it's now been it's been 20 years. I have quite a bit of ambition, I think. But I think the older I've gotten, I'm more grateful that it didn't all happen in my 20s. I think it's very hard for those that become movie stars, or, massive television stars, or huge acts when they're in their 20s. I wasn't on my first television show until I was almost 30, and that was not a success. And then my 30s were spent sort of building up a very, very nice career. But I wasn't in movies like Don't Worry, Darling in my 20s or even 30s for the most part. So I guess I'm ambitious. But now that I have gotten married and had a child, that ambition has also now been, there has to be a conversation with my partner, with my, and with myself about how ambitious will I be? Will I go and take that job, which could be a great opportunity, and go away from my family for 3 months? Or can I take them with me? Or will I take that extra Zoom meeting, or will I put my son to bed? How do you find that balance? But I don't know. I think I have a mix of both. I do like to and ambition also is born largely out of insecurity. The feeling that if I don't build the next thing out, then it might all go away. So I need to have the next projects lined up, because I don't trust that someone will call me with the next job. So if I don't build my next jobs, then they might go away.
Well, I don't think that's right. I think, and I've got a nice phrase here. I think there's always going to be someone wanting to make the Kroll call.
Thank you. I hope it's for a panel show, a yearly panel show in the UK. And I will invite you on as a guest, and you will be the featured guest with Harry Styles. And he will offer you a pair of pajamas, and your fans will go absolutely insane on him. And we will find ourselves at the beginning, as we always do, bearded, goateed, thinking about Al Pacino, and thanking each other for the time that we've given one another.
Nick Kroll speaking earlier today in the United States of America. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.